Gusting winds swept across the barren plains, carrying dust and debris in swirling eddies that painted the sky an ashen gray. The air felt heavy, dense with the weight of abandoned hopes, echoing a lament across the empty landscape. Broken roads crisscrossed the terrain where rusting cars and collapsed signposts told of a time when life wasn't quite so desperate. Here, no birds flew overhead, only the sun's vengeful glare and the parched earth beneath. And upon that stage of desolation rolled an anomaly, the Carnival. From a distance, it appeared as a kaleidoscope of lights and color, a beacon of discordant music that defied the emptiness. Yet even from afar, anyone who still traveled these lands sensed a strange tension clinging to that spectacle of wonders. The sign outside its perimeter once read, "Carnival of the Lost," its paint chipped, but the bold letters still suggestive of magic. As the caravan inched forward, pulled by robotic mules whose joints squeaked with overuse, sizzling neon tubes crackled to life, bathing tents and wagons in electric blue. Rumors of this traveling haven had long circulated through the wasteland, whispered by drifters and wanderers who recounted tales of delirious nights inside labyrinthine tents. Word was that it promised respite from the world's horror. Of course, it exacted a cost. Everything of value does in the wasteland. Juno crouched behind an outcropping of broken concrete slabs, watching. She was a slight-built survivor in patched leathers, carrying a precarious backpack stuffed with scavenged items she hoped to trade. Her hair, caked with grit, fell over her eyes as she surveyed the swirl of Carnival staff setting up massive booths. The Calliope's lilty notes wafted on the wind, and she felt a shiver roll across her shoulder. She had heard stories about mind-bending illusions, forbidden delights, and labyrinthine hallways leading to unspeakable traps. Yet the Carnival also offered sanctuary from the madness outside. People flocked to it, trading their meager possessions for a moment's fleeting joy, or at least a night's rest shielded from marauders. In a desert where existence seemed as fragile as a flickering candle flame, who could resist that promise? She took a sip from her battered canteen, letting the stale water swirl around her mouth before swallowing. Her gaze panned across tattered banners, purple, red, and gold. Clowns and masked jugglers emerged from wagons, their faces lined with an eerie exuberance. Their image conjured an odd mix of whimsy and despair. One moment they tossed batons streaked with luminescent paint. The next, they disappeared behind curtains stenciled with dancing skeletons. The effects, tricks of light, or cunning illusions only served to amplify the sense that this carnival defied rules. It was the last in a world that had turned its back on amusement. Determined to find some manner of trade, or at least a safe place for the night, Juno hoisted herself over the slabs and trudged forward. As she approached the carnival's perimeter, a mechanical monkey dressed in miniature rags scurried across her path, chattering excitedly. It wore clacking cymbals on each hand, occasionally clanging them together in time with the music. She followed its mechanical chatter until she reached a striped tent where a large barker stood. The barker's grin appeared impossibly wide, his top hat so battered it looked older than all recorded history. "Welcome, traveler, welcome," he proclaimed, arms outstretched in theatrical fashion. "Step right up to the carnival, where your troubles melt away like sugar in hot tea. We've got wonders to spare if you've the means to pay." She studied him warily, noticing the scars and the glint in his eyes. This was not a man unacquainted with violence, but he spoke with an unsettling buoyancy. Over his shoulder she glimpsed more shapes trudging forward, men and women who looked half-starved, gazing with a mixture of hope and dread at the bright tents. Others limped, leaning heavily on makeshift crutches or carrying old rifles that might or might not fire. They were ushered inside, each greeted with the same effusive welcome. Reaching into her backpack, Juno clutched a small locket. It had belonged to her mother. Inside was a tiny photograph, a man and a woman smiling in what looked like the last days of the old world. She had carried it for years, a talisman of memory. She wondered if the carnival would accept it in exchange for shelter. Maybe a piece of her history could secure a new path forward. Yet a pang of guilt curled in her stomach at the thought of letting it go. She shoved the locket back down and focused on her approach, feigning confidence. The barker's eyes flicked to her face, then down to the lumps on her backpack. "What is it you seek, traveler?" "A safe place to sleep," Juno replied, her voice quieter than she intended. "A meal if possible. I'm not unarmed, so don't think to rob me in my sleep. But I'm open to negotiation," he chuckled, revealing teeth stained with betel. "We don't trick you, dear one. No need for sharp edges here, not if you follow our rules." He stepped aside with a sweeping gesture. Come in, come in. The carnival welcomes the lost." Side, the carnival's main thoroughfare pulsed with flickering light. A ring of stalls surrounded a towering Ferris wheel that turned in fits and starts, belching smoke from its joints. Figures of all shapes and ages meandered, eyes drawn from one spectacle to the next. There was a booth offering time travel illusions, where a mirror revealed flickers of the past. Another promised sins redeemed, boasting potions brewed in test tubes. Everywhere hawkers touted fantasies and vices like brews in a bazaar, collecting scraps of selvage or intangible tokens, mementos, secrets, even regrets. The concept of currency here stretched beyond mere physical objects and into the realm of soul and memory. Juno paused before a stall that sold water-tinted emerald green. A wide-eyed gesture claimed it would grant euphoric dreams free of nightmares. She had plenty of nightmares she wished to banish, but the gesture demanded something extremely personal in return, a vow, sealed in blood, that she would never again speak her sister's name. The request was so oddly specific that Juno balked and hurried away. She felt a creeping sense that everything here had deeper consequences hidden beneath the shimmering veneer. Moving past a carousel jammed with skeletal horses and mechanical unicorns, she noticed a small group huddled around a stage. On it danced the Painted Prince, an acrobat rumored to have survived the meltdown in the West. He wore a mosaic of color across his body, leaping through flaming hoops that cast shadows of monstrous shapes. Thunderous applause thundered from the spectators, and for a fleeting minute, the carnival seemed joyous, a bright spark in the gloom. Yet that spark felt twisted, as though mania lurked behind each gasp of amazement. By evening, Juno found a sprawling tent labeled Madame Oriana's House of Mirth in swirling script. She slipped inside, brushing aside tattered red curtains. The tent opened into a large common area with cushions scattered about, embroidered rugs. Smoky incense filled the space with a heady aroma. Seated on a wooden platform was Madame Oriana herself, a regal figure in a shining robe. Her silver hair glistened under dusty chandeliers strung with mismatched bulbs. Beside her lay a ledger bound in thick leather hides. She tapped a quill pen against her lips, scanning the room for newcomers. "Have a seat, my dear," the woman said, locking eyes with Juno. There was something hypnotic in her voice, an echo that curved around syllables. "You look travel-weary. We can provide sanctuary for a small price." Juno lowered herself onto a cushion, knees aching from the constant trekking. A wave of relief poured through her at the prospect of rest, but wariness bit at the edges of her calm. "Name your price." Madame Oriana offered a gentle, almost maternal smile. "Your first memory of love." She placed a hand on Juno's wrist, prompting a shudder. "In exchange, one night's shelter plus a modest meal. And we guarantee your safety." A swirl of thoughts exploded in Juno's mind. Her first memory of love was at 5 years old, hugging her mother after surviving a violent raid early in the apocalypse. That moment had been the sole anchor when bleakness threatened to swallow her. Giving that away felt akin to losing a chunk of herself. But exhaustion and hunger dulled her resistance. She'd spent weeks eking out survival in the wastes. Perhaps a single memory was worth a full belly and a few hours without fear. She exhaled shakily. "How do we do this exchange?" she asked. Madame Oriana pricked Juno's index finger with a delicate silver needle, then handed her a slip of parchment. "Write down the memory. Allow the ink, a drop of your blood to bind it. My ledger collects it. Then it's ours. And your burden lifts." Juno hesitated, feeling the sting on her fingertip. Within the swirling haze of incense, she gathered her recollection of that warm embrace and penned a short line about it. She felt an odd tug in her chest, as if a thread of her being was unraveling onto the parchment. Madame Oriana slid it into the ledger, chanting softly. Juno's mind momentarily whirled, discarding an important piece of her identity. But she then experienced a gentle emptiness, as if she were a fraction lighter. She'd done it, and there was no going back. True to her word, Madame Oriana led Juno to a secluded corner. There, a weathered trunk held blankets thick enough to ward off the biting cold. A plate of gruel and boiled vegetables was set on a small table, accompanied by a handful of dried fruit. With trembling relief, Juno devoured the modest meal. It might have been bland under normal circumstances, but in this harsh world, it tasted divine. Somewhere in the background, laughter and music mingled with distant sobs, forming an eerie lullaby. For a moment, Juno's body relented to exhaustion, and she sank into restless sleep. She dreamt of a twisted funhouse mirror corridor, each reflection warping her features in perverse shapes. Echoes of acrobats soared overhead, and a ringmaster's laughter rattled the very fabric of the tent. In the dream, she glimpsed a figure calling her name, but the face was blurred, as if she'd never known who they were. A pang of sadness woke her soon after, though she couldn't recall precisely why. Rising at dawn, she found the carnival had shifted. Assets that had been near the entrance were now rearranged deeper into the fairgrounds. Floats rolled across the dust, driven by tireless mechanical contraptions that hissed steam with every revolution. The place seemed almost alive, reconfiguring itself into new illusions. Checking her belongings, she noticed nothing was stolen. Perhaps they truly adhered to some code of honor, twisted though it might be. In the swirling bustle, she spotted a friend she'd thought lost years ago, Gareth. He'd been part of a group Juno traveled with before a raider ambush scattered them. She blinked to be sure it was him. He was leaning against a tent post, gazing at a fire dancer's performance. A wide grin plastered his features, though a haunted look lingered in his eyes. She rushed forward, heart pounding. "You're alive!" she exclaimed. "Gareth, you made it?" He turned sharply, surprise etched in his features. Then a fleeting spark of recognition crossed his face. "Juno, by the wasteland's luck!" Joy flickered, but it was tempered by something else, an uneasy tension. "You're here. I wasn't expecting to see you." She studied him. "Where did you go after the ambush?" He glanced at the roving performers, dropping his voice. "I found my way here, eventually. Or rather, the carnival found me. I was half dead with a bullet wound in my leg. They patched me up in exchange for services." He trailed off, leaving the nature of those services ambiguous. They can be kind, helpful even. But the carnival demands loyalties, and once you're in, leaving is complicated. Juno's stomach tightened. "I only planned to stay the night, and I've already parted with a memory that meant a lot to me." A flicker of regret danced across Gareth's gaze. "That's how it starts." He sighed, looking away. "They asked for my memories of the day my baby brother was taken. I gave them up, freely, thinking it would ease the pain. Now, I can't recall a face or a name. It's as if my brother never existed. The pain's dimmer, yes, but so is part of my humanity." His words rattled Juno's resolve. "Then why stay?" He swallowed. "Something about this place is addictive. They promise illusions to fill the void you create when you surrender your memories. You see wonders. You feel alive in ways you've forgotten. And so you stay, clinging to the fantasy. There's nowhere else offering warmth, safety, or amusements. Out there, in the real world, you have no illusions except fear and desperation. Here, you can pretend the old world never ended." Overhead, a battered airship tethered to the Ferris wheel piped out carnival tunes, each note haunting. Juno's eyes flicked to the swirling vortex of activity. She considered her next step. "I can't remain," she murmured. "One memory was one too many. If I stay any longer, I'll lose more pieces of myself until there's nothing left but illusions." It's not that simple. People who try to leave either vanish into the storms or return to the carnival in worse shape. I've heard rumors of the ringmaster's power, legends that he harnesses the shards of memories, forging them into illusions that hold the desert at bay. If you try to go, you might find an endless stretch of dust with no exit, as if the carnival is now your entire world. A burst of laughter drew their attention. The ringmaster had arrived, a magnificent Hugo, flamboyant in a red tailed coat and top hat. He was addressing a circle of carnival goers, spinning tales of the final stand of civilization. Something in his booming timbre made Juno uneasy, a subliminal undercurrent in every syllable. She could sense the carnival's gravitational pull intensify whenever he spoke, a silent command to remain within his realm of delight and terror. Juno turned again to Gareth, desperation in her tone. "Help me. If you've been here a while, you've got to know a way out. There must be a place beyond the carnival's boundaries that remains real." He hesitated, eyes flickering. "Meet me at midnight behind the House of Mirrors," he finally whispered. "There's a path, I think. I can't promise it's safe, but it might be our only chance." Juno spent the rest of the day gliding through crowds, aware that eyes lingered on her. Sometimes she glimpsed a flash of metal or the grin of a face-paint-laden clown in her periphery. She jumped at every squeak of the robotic mules, every hiss of steam from the rides. The carnival's illusions, mesmerizing as they were, pressed in on her with uncomfortable intimacy. She saw men with eyes glazed in enchantment, women laughing manically as they soared on the rickety carousel, and children who had forgotten their own names, chasing illusions of candy floss. Her skin prickled with each new display. As midnight drew near, Juno crept behind the House of Mirrors, a large labyrinthine structure of glass panels that shimmered under the carnival's sporadic lights. Distorted reflections of her silhouette rippled across its exterior, taunting her with elongated limbs and warped features. She darted behind the scaffolding and found Gareth waiting, perched on a crate. His brow glistened with sweat, but he forced a grin that might have once been reassuring. "Ready?" she asked, heart pounding. "Ready enough," he replied, swallowing hard. Silently they made their way around the edges of the carnival. Gareth explained that they would slip through the supply route where a fence had partially collapsed. Because of the ongoing reconfiguration, the spot might stand unguarded for a brief window. They navigated past wagons stacked with raw illusions, silver flasks, shimmering orbs, vials of pungent liquids. Juno's heart thudded when she noticed a locked chest labeled Memories of Innocence. So that was where they kept them. She thought of the piece of her past sealed away in some ledger, forever out of reach. They reached the torn section of fencing. Juno exhaled a sigh of relief, feeling the open desert breeze. She turned, expecting to see the rest of the wasteland sprawled before them, unwelcoming but at least familiar. Instead, a wall of swirling dust loomed, unbroken by horizon or feature. It extended in every direction, forming a ring around the carnival. When she steadied her gaze, she could make out flickering shapes, as if illusions formed a swirling boundary of storms and illusions combined. Gareth gritted his teeth. "The ringmaster's magic," he muttered. "We'll have to pass through it." They advanced, stepping into the swirling dust. Immediately, Juno felt an intense pressure on her chest. Figures of half-remembered ghosts danced in the haze. Her mother's face, blurred moments from her early childhood, memories threatened to unspool in her mind, luring her with sweet illusions. If she surrendered, she sensed she would drift back into the carnival's warm glow, never to see reality again. For a moment she watched Gareth freeze. The dust formed a phantom figure of his brother, a child beckoning him closer, mouthing silent words. Gareth looked transfixed. She grabbed his arm, hissing, "Don't." She yanked him forward. He staggered, biting his lip until it bled. The illusions flickered, like images on a half-broken screen. Step by step they pushed through. Juno clenched her fists, fighting the illusions swirling in the storm. The voices that told her it was too dangerous, that she would be safer returning to the carnival's comfort. Then, with a final cry, they emerged from the wall of dust into the open wasteland. The night sky stretched infinitely above, starlight unbroken by neon or swirling illusions. They fell to their knees, lungs drawing in sharp, cold air. A wave of vertigo struck Juno as the carnival's music faded behind them, replaced by silence. She felt the hardness of the ground under her palms and the dryness of the wind on her lips. The real world at last. Gareth pressed his palms to his forehead. "It's gone," he whispered. "I barely broke free. I could feel that pull. If you hadn't been there." He let the sentence trail off, the unspoken conclusion evident. They stood slowly, turning to look back. In the distance, lights flickered faintly, but the swirling dust obscured any clear view. Juno felt conflicting emotions swirling in her chest. Relief, sadness, and the lingering hollowness of the memories she'd traded away. She guessed some ephemeral tie now linked her to the carnival. Would it come hunting for her memories? She wasn't certain. Perhaps it was content that she'd already paid her fee. Taking a deep, ragged breath, she looked at Gareth. He seemed lost, drained, like he wasn't sure if he'd made the right choice. But he was alive, and they'd escaped the carnival's thrall. That, she decided, was victory enough for now. Together they turned their backs to the carnival's glow. The path ahead was filled with heartbreak and scarcity, but at least it was theirs to navigate. Without the illusions, the world was harsh, but it was real. She could sense that the carnival would continue roaming the wastes, collecting memories and souls, a twisted wonderland promising fleeting release in exchange for bits of one's humanity. Some travelers would find it and join willingly, enthralled by the shimmering promise of escape. Others would remain on the outside, wandering the sand-blasted plains, weighed down by their burdens, but at least holding tight to their personal truths. Step by step, Juno and Gareth moved forward, away from the swirling storm of illusions. In the quiet hush of the desert nighttime, they shared no words, but clung to a joint determination. The carnival was behind them, but the memories of its strange power and mesmerizing allure would remain. Ahead, a new dawn might rise, or not. But whichever shape tomorrow took, it would be forged by their own will, unshackled from the carnival's illusions, free to face the real world and the truth, both painful and precious, it held.